Hey, everybody. Welcome to this week's Mastermind session. This week, a really exciting takeover. So we've got an exciting episode here. We're going to talk all about accountability. I'm going to pass it over to Benji. He's going to host this week and introduce our special guests.
Thanks, Mark. Yeah, really excited to be here. Love the LMN crowd. Matt and Jen, give us a wave. Nice to see you guys. We'll get to intros in a quick second here. So this session is all about accountability systems. I think that accountability is sort of a overused buzzword in a way because we hear it all the time, but very rarely is there sort of a breakdown or a practical how-to given around how to actually install this in your business. We all know it's important, but the explanations for how to do it always feel vague to me. And so today we're going to kind of flip the script on that. It's going to be very practical, very tactical. There's a whole bunch of tools we're going to share that's going to make implementing an accountability system into your business much easier. And it's going to also be very conversational. So this web class is kind of a combination of your typical webinar where it's a bunch of slides and me teaching stuff, and then a really interesting kind of roundtable discussion with Matt, Jen, and Mark on how they've implemented accountability systems into their business. So I want you, please, if you're here right now, to stay tuned till the very end. This is booked for 90 minutes. We will do a quick pause at about 55 minutes to get some of you the downloads here on screen. So there's some goal setting and review dashboards. There's job description templates. There's example weekly block schedules and a whole bunch more that we're going to send you home with. And in about 50 minutes or so, I will make available a landing page where you can download this. But I do really want you to stay for the whole 90 minutes because we're going to get into some Q&A as we go throughout the talk. Let's do some intros. Matt and Jen, tell us about you and tell us about Wells Hollow Landscaping.
Yeah, we're from Waverly, Iowa, right dead smack in the Midwest of the United States. We started business in 2008. We started using LMN back in 2016. We were running into some issues with trying to figure out how to price jobs. We had a new designer in there, kind of stumbled upon LMN. It really opened up some doors for us. And then a couple years later, we listened to a podcast through LMN with BTA on there and really kind of spun us the last 3 years, really kind of upped our game with accountability, kind of hit a plateau in our career where we were struggling, doing everything, and changed course for the better. So I think that's why we're here.
Yeah.
Jen, anything to add?
No, you kind of covered it. We're a design build focused landscaping company, but we also do maintenance and lawn care. And super humbled, grateful to be here, and hopefully everyone can maybe learn a few things.
We're really glad to have you. Mark, I think most people know you, but for those that don't, just tell them a little bit about your story.
Sure. Yeah. Started a landscape company at 23. It grew incredibly quickly. I feel like I made every mistake imaginable along the way. And as the company was scaling, I had these aspirations to grow a $100 million company. I didn't ever get there. I actually retired when the company was at 50 million to focus on building LMN. LMN was really just a sort of byproduct of being in the landscape business. As the business was scaling, I was finding it really difficult to hold people accountable, really difficult to create clarity on what success looks like. And for me, it was just really important to find a way that my staff could understand what winning looked like. And I wanted them to be able to celebrate the wins every day, because I think that's ultimately where happiness is hiding for most people, is just incremental improvement is kind of the pathway to happiness. And so I wanted to create an app that would allow my staff to just be able to look each day see what the goal was for the day, and then understand at the end of the day whether or not they were on track. And so that led me to build LMN, which really evolved into a much bigger platform that does, many, many things. And by 2018, after 20 years in the landscape business, I retired to focus solely on helping other landscapers unlock their true potential.
Well said. Amazing story. We did for those of you that are interested more in Mark's story, we did a really great, he came on our podcast, Contractor Revolution. Maybe we can drop that in the chat. And we talked about how he grew TBG Environmental to the size that it was, and then the transition to LMN. Anyway, guys, one thing I forgot to say at the beginning, we have a chat box, obviously, on the right-hand side of your interface. Please do use it throughout the session. You can ask us questions. You can make comments. You can disagree with us. You can say, man, this guy Benji's a bozo if you want to, and as many people do. Check out my YouTube comments for more on that. But I really like an engaged group, and we will be, if we can't answer the question in the moment, what we'll do is we'll grab it and we put it in another chat, and then we'll circle back to it at the end. So just please do use the chat box as we go throughout this. Let's dive right in. So today's purpose, guys, is very simple: to share industry tested accountability systems for higher attention, better productivity, and faster staff development. We have a simple agenda to go through that is going to help us teach all that, and then discuss how Matt and Jen have implemented it into their business and how Mark has implemented it into his business. So that agenda is some accountability red flags at the beginning here. I want to go through some symptoms that you might be experiencing in your business that would show you, hey, I actually might have an issue here. Like if you have a sniffle and a cough and a sore throat, you kind of think, man, I think I have a cold. We're going to go through some of the symptoms that your business might be suffering from if it's missing accountability systems. We're going to go through 4 key principles. We'll talk about goals to measure against, your meeting rhythms, how to prep for a GSR meeting, and how to structure and execute that meeting when it happens. GSR, by the way, stands for goal setting and review. It is our term for a well set up one-on-one between you and your direct reports. That's really the foundational thing we're going to be teaching today. We'll talk about some performance management, and then we'll talk about implementation, how to actually get this in place in your business. Mark, there's a great quote from you here. I don't know, from Twitter or one of the platforms. Why don't you just maybe read this quote and expand some of your thinking on it?
Sorry, I think I had a little. I didn't quite catch what you said there, Benji. I think I have a little issue with internet.
On audio, no worries. I don't know if you can see the screen, but you've got this great post where you say your business will only grow to the limit of your leadership. And I just wondered if you could maybe unpack that thought of yours and add some color to it. We may have lost Mark. Can you hear us? Okay, he'll be back in a sec.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, I think what happens a lot of times. Right.
I think there's just a pretty big lag, Mark. Okay, we'll come back to him in a sec. Guys, I want to ask you on the in the web class right now just a question. So if you're sitting here listening to us at home, in the truck, whatever, in the chat, answer this question for me. Why is holding people accountable so hard? What do you find frustrating, difficult, painful about holding the line with your people when you need to? And I'm very curious to see what kind of things get added to the chat here. It could be, it could be I don't like millennials; they're hard to work with. It could be, I'm a chicken and I don't want to be the bad guy. It could be I don't have a system for it. Let's have a look at what some of these comments are. Fear of losing employees. I don't want the responsibility. They're going to take it personally. Fear of losing them again. I don't have systems. Not knowing what things people should be accountable for. Lack of consistent systems. People don't understand how to communicate. Emotions get in the way. People take things personally. Too easy to avoid conflict. No bandwidth. Hey, Michael, good to see you. Egos, people are sensitive. Tired of reminding people we don't hold ourselves accountable. These are great. Okay, so guys, whatever it is, I want you to hold on to that idea or that phrase or that sentence that you put into the chat box and really listen for some solutions to it today, because the stuff that I'm reading, obviously I've built this deck and have put some thought into what we're going to talk about today. I feel like everything that I'm seeing in the chat box, we're going to cover from some angle or another. So please make a mental note to look for the answers that you're looking for on that problem. Mark, are you back now? Can you hear me? Do we have a bad leg still, or?
I think so. Yeah. I think I'm good now. Hopefully. Have you got me?
Yeah, we're good. There's a little bit of a lag. I'll just ask you questions and then give you a long pause. Okay. But let's keep moving through the deck. Okay. Accountability red flags. I'm going to go through this really quickly because I want to get to our guest in a sec. Here's how you would know if you have an issue in your business. There is no goal focus. In other words, the targets and the standards and the benchmarks that you set in your business, they don't hold very much weight in the mindset of your business. This is something that you will just intuitively feel in your company, but it's also something that you can measure. You're going to see it in your crew's productivity. You're going to see it in your profitability and your bottom line. There's going to be a whole bunch of indicators in your business that show you there's no goal focus. Another one is a lot of finger pointing. If you notice that your team is blaming each other, they're blaming customers, they're blaming sub-trades that they work with, they're blaming you. It's very, very common for an organization to start playing the blame game. If that's you likely have some accountability issues. Another one would be just if your staff go rogue. I don't know if you've ever found this in your company, but you give what feel like incredibly clear instructions. Go do X, Y, and Z. And they go and do P, 9, Q, and 16 other things. If it feels like really simple directions and instructions often just get abandoned, you have an issue. Here's another one that I love, and we talk about this a lot, which is entitlement issues. If you notice that your team is demanding raises without the work that would warrant it, if they want to be CEO by year's end, if they don't really believe in the idea of meritocracy, in other words, they just want to be rewarded into positions of power because they think they're great, not based on what they actually do, you probably have an issue. And then lastly, if your business just feels status quo, if things feel stale, lethargic, if they feel plateaued, you likely have some missing accountability systems. So I hope that resonates with some of you or all of you watching. I'm sure at least one of them did. Let's flip this over to Matt and Jen, and then after Matt and Jen, we'll go to Mark. So I want to ask you guys, at Wells Hollow, what are some of the biggest accountability pain points in your business?
Well, I think defining who does what and what the expectations are per role has been always been something that was a little unclear in the past. And now that we've kind of defined each role and what the expectations are, they are taking more accountability for their specific roles and owning them, and then therefore being more productive, and it's just been better all around.
Yeah, I think for the most part, it was some people didn't have control of some of the things that we were expecting out of them. And once we really started kind of dialing in what each person could control, it got a lot better, but we were just too vague on what we really wanted out of them. So we had to really kind of work the system backwards on what we truly wanted out of each and every level of our business.
What do you think is so challenging about defining roles? We were talking about this offline a little bit a couple of days ago. People always say this, oh, you need to write the job description and make it super clear and have it in writing. And that's all true. But there's something challenging as your business grows about really understanding on a detailed level exactly what each node of the system needs to do and how that gets measured. Can you talk about some of the challenges that you guys bumped up against when you were trying to think that stuff through for your individual business?
For us, it really started with our incentive, with our foreman and our managers. And then we started working it backwards and like, man, these guys aren't supported enough as we kind of work our way down in our career ladder. And so every year we just keep getting better and better. I feel like we get more clarity with it. So it wasn't perfect and it's still not perfect, but we feel like the more we do it, the more we talk about it, the more feedback we get with each and every person, that satisfaction. Mark was kind of talking about that. That's a huge goal of ours, is just to really have each and every employee 90% of the time go home and go, man, I just crushed it today. I did what I was supposed to do. So we really just started trying to figure out that part of it, I guess.
Very cool. Thank you. Mark, in your businesses, and this could be, you could be going back to TBG, or this could be, even still stuff you're working on at LMN. What are some of the big accountability pain points for you?
Yeah, I think accountability, it does definitely start with job descriptions. I think people just understanding what their role is and what they're responsible for and how they're going to be held accountable. That's kind of like the foundational thing that I think many companies just kind of overlook, that accountability starts with just a basic foundation of what the role entails and then what success looks like for that specific role. I think the success of the role is largely determined by goals and supporting metrics. And so I think if the company mission's clear, if the goals are aligned to the company mission, and then I think if those goals get cascaded down to each individual contributor in a way where they can see, if there's 5 company goals, how their role actually supports some or all of those goals. It may not necessarily be all of, then I think it's clear. And so an example would be, a field crew supervisor is supporting many goals, whether it's the customer service goals or the revenue growth goals or developing people in the company. If those are 3 goals that the company has, then I think there needs to be metrics for each role that let them know if they're contributing positively. So I think in most cases, what's missing is goals that are tied to each role and then supporting metrics that are clear. And I think the metrics often get overcomplicated. I think we can usually create 1 or 2 key metrics for each area that they're responsible for. And I think when there is a simple metric that everybody's clear on, they can go home with that feeling each night like they contributed, like they're winning, and they're part of something a little bit bigger than themselves.
I'm just reading some of the comments here. There's some really great, some really great thoughts here as you guys were talking. People who are grandfathered in at a certain spot when we are adding mid and upper level employees, that's a big challenge. Keep training consistent. It can be a huge pain point, huge strength towards accountability, depending on execution. A big point for us, says Christine, is we have some people that are held accountable by their leader and then others who are not, so it feels unfair. That kind of inconsistency is something that I think is really common. Here's another challenge that I'm just going to add that I feel like I deal with in my life is trying to hire and build a role for a position that you don't fully understand. And I feel like this happens a lot in business, more than you might think. And when you're just kind of that owner-operator stage and you yourself were a landscaper not that long ago, you can kind of get your head around what the landscaper you hire ought to do. And maybe that's true for your first crew or your first couple crews, but then you're going to start adding layers to your organizational chart where, I've heard of like what a financial controller does or what a CFO does, or I've heard of like business development or like a maybe a sales manager or a marketing manager. You're getting into these more abstract, more senior roles where you've maybe not done them yourself yet, and you have to really do a lot of research to understand what does good look like in this position. How do I measure that, and how do I hold accountability to it? And if you don't do that upfront work of maybe it's talking to other business owners who have hired these positions before, spending some time on YouTube, reading some books, you end up in this very familiar spot, which I've been in, which is you're looking at their quote unquote results, but you don't really know what you're looking at because you're not sure what good marketing results are. You're just kind of looking at a spreadsheet or listening to them talk and going, oh, that sounds great. And you find yourself 6 months later or a year later really in trouble because your lack of understanding of what that role ought to do has led to a situation where they've just kind of gone and done whatever they want and you didn't know any better. And now you're kind of stuck. And so that's another big problem, a pain point that I've gone through. And I think it happens increasingly as your business gets bigger and bigger and needs those more senior, those more niched or specialized roles. Okay, I'm going to talk for a couple minutes here, get us through this next section, and then we've got another question for our panelists. Mark was just talking about the importance of clear goals and deliverables. Before we get to that, I think that there's an incredibly important shift in mindset, and I'm just gonna like go through this table, and then I'll get our panelists' quick thoughts on this. I think that to do this well, you really need to be on the right side of this mentally. You kind of have to have the right attitude about it. And by that, I mean, there's a lot of like really unhealthy or dysfunctional or limiting beliefs or stories that we kind of tell ourselves when it comes to accountability. So I want to just separate the facts from fiction here. Here are the facts. High performers look for strong and stable leadership where standards are upheld. No one at the top of their game is laissez-faire about results. If you can think of a competitor in your market that they're a competitor, so you may not like them, but let's be honest, you kind of admire them. You look at their shop, you look at their vehicles, you look at the work they do. Those guys are pretty good. I can guarantee you that they're not like, chill with their team. Like they have a certain standard, a certain attitude, a certain ethic about them that is not, that is not laissez-faire. So that's a really important thing to be clear on. Businesses grow top line and bottom line faster when accountability systems are in place. Those are facts. The fiction that I see a lot of is this belief, and I saw it in the chat box. I'm going to come off as a jerk. My people won't like me. My staff will abandon me and go work for someone else. This will negatively affect our fun-loving culture. I can say with 100% confidence, if you upholding standards in your business forces someone to abandon you and go work for someone else, I think you'd rather they go work for your competitor than they stay in your building. So this is just something I want to use to set up the rest of the conversation. Want to make sure we're dealing with facts and not stuck in fiction. Mark, do you have any quick thoughts on this slide or this idea here before we get into the tactical side of this?
Yeah, this kind of goes back actually to where I think that I had an internet issue earlier. Basically, what that quote meant that you were asking me about is the business is only going to reach the level of the leadership. And so as a leader, if you can't start to elevate and see different things that need to change in your leadership style, then I think your business is just going to continue to reflect your ability as a leader. And I always kind of feel like this evolution is never ending, but I certainly have found that at sort of the ones and the threes, there's a big shift needed. When you're $1 million contractor, your mindset is very different than when you're 3 million. And to go from 3 million to 10, it has to change again. And it's not just your mindset, it's also the way that you lead and how you lead. And so to get from 10 million to 30, there's a completely different set of needs as a leader. And then if you're going to try to push past 30 million, I think that's another level altogether. And so where I'm going with that is when you want to start to lead the company and build a lot of accountability, you have to look at yourself and say, what am I not doing as a leader that's causing us to have such a lack of accountability in the company? And that typically does involve shifting from being an emotional leader to a more rational leader. And to become more rational, you need to guide yourself with metrics. Otherwise, everything's just an opinion. And that opinion, as you said, there's stories we tell ourselves, they're limiting beliefs that have, come into our existence from the time we were young kids to all of the limiting beliefs that our employees have who surround us. And so their beliefs are sort of feeding you consistently. And if you're an emotional leader, you're going to get upset before you ever use ration. And I think, I struggle with this to this day. It's hard not to get upset when people aren't getting things done, but you have to get back to reality and you have to look at metrics if you're hoping to ever fix anything. And so I think having goals with supporting metrics that allow us to actually look at reality and then celebrate either a win or what may be considered a failure. In fact, I don't really see bad results or results that aren't as intended as a failure. I think, in fact, we should celebrate those because even a bad result or a less than result is a gift in a sense that we learn a lesson and now we know what not to do or what we need to do next in order to get a better result. And so creating a rational way of leading involves accepting bad results and actually celebrating them because we can sort of pivot and drive improvement. And I think when you lead that way, it becomes much easier to hold people accountable because they realize that when metrics aren't great, they can still come forward and tell you what the issue is and count on you to help optimize those metrics. And I think that's where the trust comes from. But then also, like, everybody's welcoming the feedback or the daily metrics that allow them to celebrate the wins and also celebrate the losses and find better ways of doing things in the future.
I love it. Let's talk about the 4 fundamentals of goal setting and review. So we're going to move into kind of an educational section here, and then we're going to ask a few more roundtable questions. Goal setting review, like I said earlier, is our Breakthrough Academy's accountability system. And really what you can think of it as is a well-structured, well-prepared one-on-one meeting that you, the owner, hold with your key reports, your direct reports. And they, in turn, hold it with their direct reports. So in order to do that effectively, going back to something that that Mark, Matt, and Jen have all spoken about, is the idea of clear goals and deliverables. In other words, you can't hold someone accountable to a line that you never drew in the first place. So that is why this is square one. The term deliverables, I just want to define. It is the clear, measurable, and tangible results that an employee must deliver for the company. There are some really great resources available to help you with this. In fact, I might even leave PowerPoint for a second and show you. We have put together like an employment agreement quick tool. I don't know if you can see that. This is like a how-to guide on the left that walks you through how to build these, and then a fill in the blanks template that makes this totally paint by numbers. You can get rid of the BTA logo, change the font, add your logo, do whatever you want to it. And then Mark and the LMN team have graciously added some like role specific, contractor specific job descriptions as well. This is where those deliverables should be described in writing. So that's a really helpful tool to help you get started. But the way that these all fit together into a business is this. You as the leader have organizational goals. There's going to be some revenue targets. There's going to be a desired gross profit and net profit. There's going to be a desired customer satisfaction score that you measure through your Google ratings, or you measure through NPS or post-job surveys, or any number of mechanisms. And the job of the leader is to really break down those organizational goals into individual bite-sized pieces that a that a person or a small team can contribute. And so you can, the text might be a little bit small to see some of the smaller bubbles on this org chart, but you can see our project manager, Patrick Mahomes here. You can see examples. He's got 2.5 million in produced revenue. He needs to maintain a 35% gross profit margin. He needs to maintain a 95% customer satisfaction rating, and he needs to hire and train the new people on the team. Those are his clear deliverables. We can measure each and every one of those. And when you assemble the pieces of the puzzle for your whole company, what you start to see is alignment and people rowing in the same direction. And so this is really the starting point. We're going to get to, some secondary systems in a second, but I really wanted to kind of over-explain this idea of deliverables. And then let's go through some examples. So Matt and Jen in Wells Hollow, can you talk about the work you guys have done to think this through, write it down, and maybe even give us a few examples? I don't know, technicians, foremen, what have you. What deliverables do your team control?
Well, this has been a definite work in progress. We went from really having nothing defined to, over the last few years, just getting that more dialed in each year. We do employment agreements every year, and actually we just got through ours for the year last week, so this is great to talk about. For our foremen, for example, they can control their efficiency, so they are scored on their efficiency, which is their estimated hours to actual hours. Our technicians, which would be underneath them, are a little bit more simplified just because they don't have as much control as far as efficiency or bid or anything like that. So they are more, we have things like making sure they're to work on time every day, and
it's more task related to that support to that foreman. Things that they can control and what truly moves the needle for that foreman. Our managers, we like gross profit margin because it's something that they're responsible for. So we do hold that we really do look at that gross profit margin for them. And then customer satisfaction, we tie that into it too. So those are kind of our estimators and our designers. They're tied into efficiency, and estimating jobs correctly is a big one for those guys.
I'd like to just click in on a couple things you said there for maybe a newer landscaper on the web class today who's doing everything like 100% hourly. Can you talk about how you went from just a very basic hourly model to actually tracking estimated hours for a project against actual hours for a project? Because that's a big jump going from super basic, we're not tracking anything, to actually having, this is what we expect you to do, this is what we actually saw from you. So how did you guys make that leap in terms of your tracking?
A couple of years ago, we had an estimator, and again, we were bidding kind of emotional. We didn't have a true system, and then with LMN, their time tracking, we're always bidding hours per job. And so my biggest fear every night was going home. I wasn't worried about losing on materials. I feel like materials are pretty easy to estimate. It's man hours for us. It's like, how do we dial that in? And like 99% of our work is negotiated up front. So if we botch the 100-hour man-hour job, it takes us 150. We're out those 50 hours. So we just started making a chart spreadsheet, and it's our religion. Like every job, we go back and we job cost it, and we start getting production rates. So then every new job will have that production rate with it broke out into steps that estimator uses. And then as the foremans go into that job, for instance, on a 100 man-hour job, we try to break it out bite-sized pieces each day. With, like, for instance, today we have 3 people out of crew. So there's 30 people. So they're using 30 man-hours of that. So they have to be able to size that job with what they're doing. And it becomes, it's like scoring for a football game. They just kind of keep watching that and making sure that we're flying back. Sometimes there's issues though. They'll come back and be like, hey, we messed this up. And so that's where it's our continuous learning. And so, okay, we need to change that formula a little bit. This scenario was a touch bit different. We could only get in there with a mini skid. Or yesterday we had a job. I mean, couldn't even get there with a mini skid. It was just all wheelbarrows all day. Obviously, that's going to be a whole different formula in that. And so we just keep dialing in our production spreadsheet daily. I mean, that we live by that thing.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I just want to underscore something you guys said, which is this obsession with job costing, and that has turned into a very developed production spreadsheet that allows you to track all this stuff. I think one thing that I see throughout any profitable business that's really crushing it is performance pay in some way, shape, or form, whether that's a piece rate pay system, there's bonuses for efficiency or productivity. This is like the hallmark of all really great businesses. Mark, what are your thoughts on developing deliverables for a team? How have you gone about it? What do you find useful? What do you coach landscapers to do on this question?
Yeah, I think a company is kind of generally made up of many, many parts. And so starting out with an overarching budget and then creating sub-budgets that support that budget, I think is a strong way of doing that. So I'll have a company budget. We'll have a divisional budget for each division that's of any significant size as a ratio to the all-up revenue. And then there's crew budgets. And so this way, we can look at the business and see how successful it is in each division on each crew. And then with job costing, we can see how each job is performing. And so when we can analyze the company that way, we can quickly see where we need to double down on efforts to improve. Then what we try to do is just create key metrics for each role. So if I'm in sales, it's my proposed work and my close rates. If I'm in production as a crew supervisor, it's going to be my weekly and monthly revenue that supports my revenue target for the year, combined with gross profit. If I'm estimating work, I'm estimating based on some key rules of engagement, which I try to teach contractors to focus on revenue per hour and gross profit. And the reason for that is you could be selling work that has a really high gross profit that's not actually generating enough revenue for you to hit your sales goal. So when you combine the two, revenue per hour, and you combine that with gross profit, then you know that you're generating a lot of volume with your labor each day, and therefore you're also going to hit your sales goal, which means you're actually on track for gross profit. So you like taking the budget and building really meaningful key metrics and then creating like rules of engagement. So then all I have to say to my salesperson is based on your close rate and your target, you need to be estimating 600,000 a month to close 300. And then I can go to the crew that's producing that work and say, hey, your goal is 250 per month to produce. And we're going to measure that with estimated versus actual hours, your daily crew score, which we serve those up on the app in real time. And then we're just going to look at your job cost and see what the gross profit was and what the actual revenue per hour was. And our system just does that automatically. And so if I've got sellers who are selling properly and I've got field crews that are producing properly, and we hit our targets each week, each month, and each quarter, and then at the end of the year, then we're going to hit the goal. And I think tying an incentive plan back to each individual for them reaching the key metrics and staying within those sort of rules of engagement that we've set out at the start of the year makes it super easy. And so each person in the company should have just a couple of metrics that they're being held accountable to. And I always kind of like to tie that back to revenue, first and foremost, because we need revenue. That's what keeps the lights on. and we need customer satisfaction, and we need safety. And revenue is, kind of makes up the efficiency and the quality of the revenue. And then, ultimately safety and customer service levels tell us whether we're doing things properly. And so ultimately, my sort of way of looking at business is safety, quality, and efficiency are the three sort of drivers, and in that order. And I just need to make sure that I've got metrics that make sure that those things are all optimized and that we're actually hitting our revenue goals at the end of the year.
Mark says, if we have our sellers selling properly and our producers producing properly, we're going to hit our goal. It's so easy. It's that simple. Now, we know that in reality, people need to be managed, and to get those sellers selling properly, or those producers producing properly, there is ongoing management and coaching and feedback and communication that needs to happen throughout the season. I wish it were as simple as drawing up a nice employment agreement, having someone read it, sign off on it, and then they just robotically go execute to perfection for the next 12 months. We know that's not how humans work, and these are human-driven businesses. So we need to do really good quality one-on-one meetings. I'm going to show you how we prep for these GSR meetings in the Breakthrough Academy framework. So what you're looking at right here is an example of what we usually call just a GSR dashboard. I'll actually show you it in Sheets. So let me just see how that looks. Can you guys see that? Yeah. Do I need to zoom in a little bit? Maybe I'll zoom in a tiny bit. What this allows us to do is centralize all of the data. Going back to what Mark was saying, it's like if we're just sharing opinions, I thought you did a bad job, and your foreman is saying, well, I thought I did a good job. It's really, really difficult to cut through the opinions and get to truth and get to fact. So what this dashboard allows us to do is centralize all of the data. We see our goals in terms of production versus our actuals, our hours produced, our charge rate. There's a reminder here of our annual deliverables right at the top. Those are pulled from our employment agreements. And then there's basically a check-in on the last week. How did it go? What were your goals and what actually happened? What did you learn? What do you need help with? What are our goals for the next week? Your actual employee, if I go to the next slide, is prepping for these. So they are usually on a Friday afternoon or maybe first thing on a Monday. They are coming in, they're updating the numbers for you. They're sharing their wins, their losses, and they're doing a first cut of their next week's goals. They're thinking through, this is what I need to do this coming week in order to stay on track. There's always a connection. There should always be a connection between what they are putting in their GSR document, their GSR dashboard, and what they are expected to execute on in their long-term goals in that employment agreement. And really what these meetings are meant to help you do is move from kind of a boss or a task manager or someone who is barking orders much more to a coach. If you have someone who's engaged in this process, and we're going to talk in a minute about how to get people engaged in this process, because it's not always, they don't always love the implementation of this. Sometimes you need to kind of work at it a little bit. But when you have someone who's engaged in this process, they are coming to you eager for feedback and coaching and support, and the entire dynamic of your relationship with these people change. And obviously the results on the ground change. And we'll talk later to how it actually changes for the worker, whether that be a foreman or a technician or an estimator or a production manager. There's a really interesting synergy here between what we do at Breakthrough Academy and what LMN does. And I've got just a little slide here from LMN of a job cost overview. Mark, why don't you talk a little bit about how LMN and the tech you guys have built can sort of support this tight accountability system that we're talking about by way of the GSR method?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think that the GSR method is kind of systemizing conversations, and those conversations are here's what I've got planned for next week, and here's what happened last week. And I think what LMN does is it provides the vision in that it tells people how long things should take, and then in real time it tells them how long things are actually taking, so that each day when people are out performing their day-to-day work, they have their key metric in front of them all the time, which is, if it's a routine maintenance crew, every time they pull up to a new property, it tells them how long that visit should take. And when they leave, it tells them how long they were there. And so what we're trying to do is lead our team with leading indicators instead of results. Because what happens is we in order to get good results, people need to know what good looks like in the moment. And so what LMN does is it gives them the target and it gives them the real-time feedback. And that way they know they're winning and they can be proud of their day for themselves, because I think us business owners get far too busy and we forget or don't tell people often enough or don't see them often enough to tell them how well they're actually doing. And so the system's designed to take the leading indicators and put it in the hands of those that actually manage the work, so that they can work more independently and know what success looks like and understand when they're winning and when they're not. And if they're not winning, then in the one-to-one GSR meeting, that's when you can really step in as a coach and ask what you can do to help improve the results. It may be that the estimates are not being released with enough hours to produce the work, or it may be that we need better tooling or better systems and processes, or there could be some flow interruptions in the overall business that are sort of outside of their control that you as the leader need to resolve. And so I think when you get really consistent with these types of meetings, what's happening is you're looking at reality and you're being rational about the results, and you're using a GSR meeting to drive continuous improvement deep into the organization, because you're sitting each week having a meaningful conversation about what happened and what we could do better to get better results in the future, without just like getting overly focused on a poor result and starting to finger point and getting all emotional about it. So I think it just takes the emotion out of it, creates a really rational, systemized way of just getting better and talking about the things that really matter in the business. And so I think one-to-ones are a key component of really driving accountability deep within the organization. And LMN is really a tool that provides the insight and the feedback so that you can really manage this process without too many manual steps behind the scenes.
Jen and Matt, when you guys installed a dashboard like this and you really got into the rhythmical meetings, what have you guys noticed about having your team come to these meetings well prepared?
I think for us, like the epiphany moment of the GSR was even us internally, we didn't have this data live for them. So they were basically running a mile goal, but then never knew where they were at. And so just that check-in weekly, or we do ours bi-weekly, but bi-weekly just kind of goes, okay, we're here. Just like Mark was saying, where do you want to go? And just having them already, there's buy-in. They're looking at it more times than just that once every 2 weeks, commenting on things. It just keeps the day-to-day minutia of making sure Mrs. Jones's mulch stays in her bed. You know, that it's very important, but it does keep everybody coming back to the big picture of where do we want to go. And it really does kind of give that vision for them and us to make sure we get there. So I feel like the more we did it, the more that everybody realizes that we're on task and we can basically conquer that goal, and we can see that we're going there.
Yeah, it's great to just have the numbers to back it up too, because I feel like deep down everyone wants to do a good job, and they're doing the best. But to actually have that data there to show them every week with how they're stacking up to their goals has been great for us as managers, and then also for them to see where they're stacking up and how they can make changes in the moment to get those goals quicker and faster.
Yeah,
Changes need to be done,
but it does
it's good.
give us a kick in the butt to make sure that we have that data in front of them. So
Right.
for us, that was a big one. Like, man, we gotta up our game and
For sure.
really keep that up in front. And so we start to see patterns then too.
I got a question for you guys. I think a lot of business owners have a belief, and I think this is kind of another limiting belief, but there's sort of an attitude sometimes that we have where it's like, well, you don't know my team, my technicians wouldn't care, my foreman doesn't really care, my laborers wouldn't care, they're not wired that way, they just want to do the work, and I think that that's true to an extent, but have you guys been surprised by how engaged clear data that sort of gamifies their work experience, that shows them a win versus a loss and the difference between, like, have you been surprised at actually how bought in, the quote unquote lowly technician becomes when that's presented well for them? And could you maybe add some thoughts to that?
Yeah, I mean, I think obviously you can't just throw it at them from day one. I mean, it went very slow. We kind of kept trying to change our culture of kept saying that job satisfaction, what do you want at the end of the day? What do you want at the end of the year? What do you want at the end of 10 years? To kind of truly define that for each person. And then showing them like, hey, this is what we have, but also kind of keep breaking it down to, doesn't matter who you are within the company, your role supports this next role, and whatever you do, then we can't function, without you. So it just kind of kept reiterating how important each role is. We can't function without each one, and then tied it back to this is what you can control, and this is how we're going to measure this. Obviously, you do get some pushback, but I think as it kind of keeps moving forward, all it takes is one person, and then everybody else starts seeing that person win. Everybody else wants to be winning too. I think naturally everybody wants to win. So yeah.
A lot of people in the chat box are kind of saying the same thing. Brian says, same for crews with landscaping. When they have a measurable goal, they become professionals at the trade, not just laborers. So I think that there's really something big there. I want to ask the audience a question here, guys. We're going to do a little poll, check in with you guys. Give us a scorecard out of 10. This is a safe space. Nobody's going to rat on you if you're self-scoring a 1 or a 0. I've actually seen some negatives on some negative 3s on these web classes when we ask this question. So the question is, like, what level of prep and meeting structure do you do with your team? So 1 would be like, so gang, what do we want to talk about this morning? A 10 would be, we have qualitative and quantitative prep ready to discuss with focused points. And then that mid-range, you'd be like, well, I sort of had a plan coming into the meeting. And then the discussion went all over the place. So in the chat box, just pick a number, type it in. Let's have a look here. We got a -5. We got another -5. I like landscapers because they're really honest. When I do this with like roofers, let me tell you, it's just everyone's a 10 or 11. At least you guys are kind of, at least you're real. Got a 9.5 and 8. Alexa, you're a 10. Okay, great. 6 or 7. Awesome. Okay, well, wherever you're at, these tools that we're talking about, LMN for the visibility, for the data, for the project management, GSR dashboards for the human-to-human accountability, are going to help you no matter what score you gave yourself.
What can I jump in there for 1 sec,
Totally.
Benji? One thing I'll say is, if you're holding meetings where there's absolutely no discussion about metrics, then rethink your scoring. That's a big sort of indicator of the quality of your meetings. We should always have a metric to support a result, like so that we can say, hey, we did this and here's what we saw, an improvement or not. And then we're going to do this so that we improve this metric or another metric. And so I think a metric should be included in every meeting, and we should know what we're actually meeting about and what goal we're trying to actually move forward. And so if you've got 3 or 4 overarching goals in the company, when you hold a meeting, you should know how this meeting is going to contribute to that goal and what metric you're trying to actually optimize. I think it's a key component of any meeting agenda.
If you are doing a meeting without a discussion of metrics, you have a problem. Okay, guys, I said at the about an hour into this, we were going to do a quick pause to get some of you your resources should you need to leave early. We're going to get back to the Q&A. We've got a few more slides and ideas to get through, but very, very important that I just quickly pause and do this. So a couple of things available. There is a 2-month free offer from LMN and Greenius by using the promo code BTA2024. It's more than $2,000 in savings. You get Pro Plus for 2 months, Greenius for free for 2 months. That is available. I also want to talk really briefly about Breakthrough Academy and what we do here. It's very simple. We implement the contractor growth method, the only business system purpose-built for contractors. So, we are not a technology like LMN. You could think of this more like an accelerator or a coaching group, a masterminding group. But we have a framework that we install that we call the contractor growth method, which is made up of 6 parts. We build out financial controls to help you track your numbers and make data-driven decisions. We help you define roles. That's what we're talking about today. That's where this GSR session comes from, is really the second part of the system, which are defined roles. We talk about hiring systems so that you can get A players and not just feel like you're scraping the bottom of the barrel all the time. We help you implement training and onboarding systems so that you can skill people up and get them as productive as possible, as fast as possible. We optimize your sales and marketing so that you can take your great product and service to the world. And we help you with your goal setting and execution, crafting a vivid vision for a 5-year BHAG, working that back into annual goals and quarterly goals. And week in, week out, you work with an exceptional coach who helps you not only build systems for the contractor growth method, but like you need to hold your team accountable, we hold you accountable as the owner. So we're doing GSRs with you. We see some really cool results, 25% increase in revenue after 12 months of the program, and a 69% increase in net profit after 12 months of the program. And we work with a very, I would say, specific profile of business. So if you own a contracting business, you do between $1 and $15 million a year. You've been at it 2 or more years. You want to grow. You want to build a fully systemized company, develop as a leader, mastermind with high performers, and be challenged and held accountable. This would be a really great spot for you. So to do that, you're going to, we're going to launch a little bubble on screen here, a little icon. You press click here, the blue bubble that says click here, and that's going to take you to a landing page that looks like this. So you're going to fill this out, and I'm going to give directions really painstakingly here because this is important. You're going to fill out this form, and there's a few options. If you just want the templates we're talking about, you say on this box where it says show me how Breakthrough Academy helps contractors use these resources and scale up with less stress, you just say no, I just want the resources. But if you do want to connect with Breakthrough Academy, you say yes, show me. Same thing goes for LMN, yes or no. When you get to the next page, you click the blue button, it takes you here. This is the important part I want to explain. You have 2 options. You can book a call directly with us to go straight into the calendar. We have 18 spots open. But to do that, you need to fill out this really simple form, answer a few questions, and then you'll be allowed to select a spot, a time that works for you. If you don't know your schedule next week, or you're not sure you're going to make it, I would not fill out the form, and I would not book the call. We already have your information, so we'll call you. But if you do want to book something immediately, you fill out the form, select a time, please show up to that meeting. I was asked by our assessment team to say, please show up to it. We only have 18 spots. If you don't know, we will call you. Those are the simple instructions. Okay, let's get back to my deck. Where were we? Aaron, why don't we just launch the pop-up one more time for the people that didn't get it? Employment agreement tool, industry job descriptions from both Breakthrough Academy and LMN, GSR dashboard, a GSR example. There's the deal from LMN, all of that stuff in the bundle, so make sure you grab that. I think it says click here, click on that button and go do that. Let's get back to the rest of the deck. And I hope that the vast majority of you stick around for the rest of this. Okay, where were we? Meeting rituals. Can we ask this question? Dang. There we go. Mark, can you? I don't know if you're typing. You're a loud typer.
I'm not typing.
Someone's a loud typer. I get called out for being a loud typer all the time. That's better. Okay, meeting rituals. So when are you doing this? This is a really good question. You are generally doing this on a weekly or a bi-weekly basis. These meetings, as I described, are a leadership tool that helps you keep a pulse on what is happening in your business, hold accountability, provide direction and support, and manage performance. And when you roll these out, you stick to these. Okay, they happen on a fixed recurring schedule, no matter what. There's kind of a conversation we could have briefly about doing these in person versus virtual. I like in person because I think quality time is really important. In-person quality time is important. They can be a little bit less convenient because of travel time. Virtual can work just as well too. The one thing that I would say about your virtual GSRs is you really want to hold the line when it comes to preparedness. Sometimes when you move to Zoom, a few weeks later, you move to a phone call, and then a few weeks later, it's a shorter phone call and it's done from the truck and they didn't actually fill out their prep. So just if you're going to do virtual, keep to a video call all the time and the prep is always complete. Matt and Jen, you'll need to take yourself off mute here when I ask you this question, but can you talk a little bit about the rollout process with your team? Did you have anybody that was resistant? Was this a difficult thing to get implemented? Just talk to us a little bit about what you guys did there with respect to rolling this out.
This has been one of our biggest struggles. Excuses, but our office is just a big circle with 8 to 9 people in there at any given time, and then walk-in traffic on top of it. So we never really have a real private place. Actually, a lot of our GSRs happen kind of in our patio outside of our office, just kind of.
We're in our house because we live next door.
Yeah, in our house. So we really struggle with that. Just recently, we've started switching to a half an hour before work. Before kind of everybody comes in, we'll set up that time with, I just do GSRs with our managers. And so just setting that time up. But we've struggled with this, but we feel like now we're kind of moving forward. I will say sometimes I will skip one. I get busy and I'll skip one and I'll get called out. So our managers really do value this, and if we skip, they typically will speak up and be like, hey, we got to reschedule, but we didn't get together on this. So that makes me feel good that they're usually on top of their game.
Do you, when they're calling you out, is that because they really they value the meeting and it's something that they've gotten used to and they need their questions answered? Like, is that where it's coming from, you think?
Yeah, totally. I think it's got a few things to talk about. They want to know kind of how they're stacking up. But yeah, typically we'll walk away just like them. they'll have things to come prep with. Typically I have things I have to walk away with, being like, all right, I got to follow through, making sure you're supported. Just recently, mowing crew, they need a new mower. So we're just trying to figure that out. So that was one of the things I'm like, all right, I got to make this happen. After this meeting, we got to go try to figure this out and what they want, type of thing. So, yeah.
It's awesome. I would just make a couple of comments about the rollout of these. One, I would pilot these out with a few high performers, meaning, start to do this process with 1 to 2 people that like, and trust, that are bought into the business already, that kind of feel like it's going to be easier to roll it out with. That's going to allow you to get some practice, get some reps in, learn how this system works, and then you can roll it out to the rest of the team. A lot of people will say, well, I hear you, but Tim doesn't want to do it, or Greg doesn't want to do it. They're just not wired that way. They just want to get to work. And that's fine. There's absolutely still a place in business for the Tims and the Gregs, but they're usually not going to be in leadership roles. You're not going to be a foreman or a production manager and not have a GSR meeting with the owner of the business, because what that means is you're sort of off in your own world, doing what you think is best without reporting in to the leader of the business. So pilot project these with a few people you like first before you do it with the whole team. Gives you a softer landing to begin with. Mark, a question for you. We were talking offline about like sort of how you rolled these out in a very simple way with your foreman, and then I think there were these 3 big questions that you roll into every GSR meeting, every one-on-one meeting, that are super valuable and people can learn from.
Yeah, I think the easy way, to roll this out is to make an effort to go and stop in on job. I think I had another blip there. The easy way to roll this out is to go and stop in on your job sites and hold these meetings. And 30 to 60 minutes at the very most. I think when you stop in and you spend some time with each crew leader, and you're actually asking them the same questions every week. First off, we want to talk about metrics. So we're just going to talk about project hours. That's what we're always going to be talking about as we start any meeting. And then once we reflect on the project hours and we start to look at how things are going and where we're winning and where we're not, then we're going to always talk about how to drive improvements. And so my big questions are usually, what do you need from me in order to remove flow interruptions or improve the way that we're doing things? And that usually immediately goes back to labor, material, equipment, and information. And so generally speaking, we're always kind of saying, what do you need from me? And then we're analyzing those key areas. And then what we're always trying to focus on is what we're going to do to improve. And I think when you look at any one-to-one meeting, is looking at reality using metrics, talking about what we can do to create continuous improvement, and then creating some action items or next steps. I think that makes for a good meeting. And generally speaking, I think if you've got a standardized agenda, and if you've got your meetings in a calendar, so you're going to go and visit with your supervisors on a regular cadence, it's a recurring meeting. If you've got 6 crews and you're the owner operator, then maybe Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and between 9 and 11, you go out and you do your one-to-one meetings. And when you're doing that, what you're doing is you're creating automation, in the sense that this is going to happen all the time. But the most important thing is we're always going to be talking about the metrics that matter. We're going to have rational conversations, and we've systemized continuous improvement. And so I think your regular meeting cadence dictates your ability to drive continuous improvement deep into the organization. Most business owners don't meet it with any intention. They show up, they ask a few questions, they walk around and kind of tell everybody what's wrong, and they hop back in the truck and leave. And that's just not a motivational way to lead.
I love what you said there about a standardized agenda and a recurring meeting. typically when we're looking at how to actually do these, those would be two things that I'm really bullish on. And I want to say a little bit more about why. Part of the power in doing this is not that, you need, I think I'd encourage people to take a little bit pressure off themselves. It's not like you need to show up and have true like moments of brilliance and genius as a leader where you're solving complex problems like this magician on site. You can do that too, but the real power is in the routine. When your crew knows that every Tuesday morning there's going to be a meeting with Mark and he's going to check in on these numbers, something very like subconscious happens, that there's an expectation that someone is checking in on this. And without that, it becomes very easy for standards to slip. And so I honestly think 80% of this is just showing up. We're going to talk a little bit about the numbers to track and the dashboard to use, but most of the benefit is just the regularity, the consistency, the recurring nature of these meetings, and going through a standardized agenda. Let's talk about that standard. Go ahead, Mark.
It really shows that you care as well. Like that, I think when you actually create recurring check-ins, you're just showing that you actually care about the results and you care about listening to their ideas. I think one of the biggest types of waste that most companies have is unused employee creativity because there's no feedback loop. And in this meeting, it's you saying, what can I do to make this easier? And generally, that's when they're going to tell you our material deliveries are constantly behind schedule. This piece of equipment that you're having us work with, it's not capable of lifting this pallet. You're buying the wrong machine. You expect us to lay 500 square feet per day. On our best day, we only lay 300. And so what's happening is we're optimizing everything, and we're talking about the things that matter, and we're identifying opportunities to train our staff so that we just get better at doing the work. Opportunities to buy better equipment, opportunities to remove all the flow interruptions. And I think most companies don't have a standardized way of doing that. And so they tend to kind of just do things the way they've always done them because the employees assume that the owner doesn't care or isn't interested in driving improvement. And I think the meetings actually create the culture that most companies are actually hoping happens accidentally. You're going to create culture by having these meetings.
There's our friend, our mutual friend, Ryan Markowitz. Mark has this great saying. I'm sure you've heard it before, but he says, every set of hands comes with a free brain. And I think that really speaks to the idea of like one of the biggest wastes we have as a business is unused creative thinking, problem solving that a lot of the times comes from the ground up. So this is a very easy way to tap into that. Really quick run through of how to run one of these meetings, guys. It's not complicated. What you see on screen here is for a 30-minute goal setting and review meeting. You would basically double these timestamps for a 60-minute goal setting and review meeting, which you'd likely do with more complex roles. If you're meeting with a production manager, a sales manager, someone that's more in a leadership position, you're probably going to need an hour to get into the stuff you need to. But we always go through the same thing. There is a quick 5-minute opening check-in. I really believe in just human to human. How was your weekends? Tell me about your kids' baseball tournament. Oh, you said you were going to go on this fishing trip. Oh, did you try the new recipe that you were talking about in the office last week? Whatever it is, I'm a big proponent of rapport and knowing your people on a personal level. And you always want to check in with them first before you get down to business. Then we move into a 10-minute section where you are reviewing the performance from the last week. Because you have a culture of transparency and trust, your people should feel really comfortable being honest about whether they won or they lost last week. If you have people who are hiding results or minimizing failure or embellishing things to make them look better, you're not doing a GSR meeting. And in fact, you actually have some trust issues on your team. So you really want to make sure that there's candor and a feeling of safety for your people to say, hey, this went well. This really didn't go well. I totally botched this with a customer and I need your help to fix it. Then what you're going through is their future goals and plans, and typically, like we talked about in the prep, your report, whatever role they're in, they should have had a first crack at that first plan. And usually, in my experience, it's about 80% right. And you need to add a few things or take a few things away because they've forgotten about this or they're looking at something the wrong way. You need to make some tweaks to their plan. But they should have the bulk of it thought through for you. And then at the end, you're going through what we call admin items. And these are just, in business, there are always little things that need to happen. Hey guys, we're getting new company clothing. I need your shirt and pants sizes. Hey, you know what? That machinery needs to go in for repair. Can you drop it off here on Friday? It's just the little stuff that you need to kind of cross off the list. Now is your chance to do that. One of the things that I think a lot of people don't maybe think about when they consider installing goal setting and review meetings is say, I don't really have time to do this. Seems like a bunch of extra work. What you will notice is you will receive fewer phone calls from your team when this is done well, because they know that their questions get answered in their GSR meeting. They have a set time to look forward to, and you will have less random phone calls to deal with. So it's actually a massive time saver. What do I want to do? Let's do the 4:00 mark quickly, and then we'll talk about accountability tools with you, Matt and Jen. We're going to talk about your GSR dashboards, but this was a really useful little thing. The 4:00 at the field level. Mark, talk to us about that.
Yeah, in my landscape business, I found it was getting very difficult as the company was scaling to just make sure that each crew was thinking about the right things each day. And so we implemented a daily meeting cadence that started with a kickoff meeting in the morning, one after lunch, one after first break, one after lunch, afternoon break, and then end of day, we wanted this 4:00 filled out, which was basically, what are your top 3 goals for tomorrow? What did you get finished up today? What's slowing you down? And what are the flow interruptions? And that's generally, again, labor, material, equipment, subcontractors, or information that might be missing. And then what do you need from me to succeed? And when you ask this every day, then what I feel like happened, and this gets emailed to the supervisor or project manager or owner, depending on the size of the company, every day from your direct reports, you've kind of taken the weekly GSR meeting and you've broken it down so that they're thinking about this every day. And then I think when you get to a weekly meeting, you're kind of almost talking about the summary of everything that you've received each day. So you're kind of creating some daily accountability that, again, eliminates texts and phone calls and emails randomly. And we're making sure that everybody's seeing the project for where it's at, what's been done, and what's holding us up or slowing us down every single day. And I think that kind of aligns everybody. And then you don't sort of bump into somebody a week or two later and them say, yeah, we're way behind on this project because our material didn't get delivered on time last week. And I was finding those type of problems were becoming rampant in my company. And people just weren't being accountable to the things that mattered each day. And when they started filling this out, I felt like they realized it was their job to resolve it each day. So rather than complaining with their responses, they were actually being proactive and dealing with things on their own because they didn't want to have to enter it. They wanted to actually solve their own problems.
Love it. We're going to do, I'm just being mindful of time. We're going to do 5 minutes on these tools, or however, just if it's less than that, that's fine, Jen and Mark, but I do want to show the GSR dashboard that you use for your leadership level and then the one for the field level. So we'll talk about those for a minute. I'm noticing in the moderator tab here, we've got a whole bunch of really good questions piling up that I want to hit before in the next 10 minutes before we lose Mark, because I think he has to go at the top of the hour. So on this one, Jen and Matt, I'm going to actually just open. I think I have these ready. You have basically a leadership GSR tool and then one for the field staff. Let's start with the leadership one. How does this work? How have you rolled this into your business, and how does this tool support accountability overall?
So yeah, just at the top, we have our deliverables. So this would be our production managers. So 1, 2, 3. And then obviously these are the things that big picture stuff. This is the things that he's responsible for every week. We do have tabs within this GSR for their matrix. So if you scroll over, Benji, a little bit.
And it might have been just a screenshot.
Oh,
Yeah.
I just screen grabbed this. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah. So in our live one, we have a tab that tracks for our production manager. We track gross profit margin. So monthly, after we kind of close the books, I calculate the gross profit of the design build division and kind of keep track of that. And then as far as where our numbers, as far as production and as far as revenue produced and labor hours as well.
Yep. So in that meeting, then we're going through. Basically, we start just like you, Benji, were saying. How you feeling? How can be supported each day? It is kind of nice. Obviously, we have communication every morning, almost every night, all through the day. We're talking a lot between me and him, but this is just kind of an unscripted time where it's just a little bit looser. It doesn't have to be super tight, and we can just kind of figure a few things out. Typically nothing comes up, but anyway, so, and then we jump down, and each meeting we'll just kind of have a few primary goals. So our primary one this last month, March was a really tough month for us, super stagnant as far as production. So we're like, we need to up it. And so we had to set a goal. We got that goal set. And actually we've done another one since. We crushed that goal. So now we can move on and start over again. Training on job process. That's kind of been a big one for us. Who's aligning, and between me and him, we're stepping on toes. So we're constantly trying to tweak who's responsible for what. This one probably got screenshotted before we finished it, but we've gained some traction. Actually, that one stays this month because we don't feel like we had a hit on that, or we completed that one. So we kind of keep working our way through it. We do brain dump at the bottom. I think there's some brain dumps down there of just some things that we want to kind of come back to, or just some things that discuss that we want to make sure we get. So.
And then there's kind of a simpler one for your Tech 2 position. You maybe just walk us through this one quick.
This one's been really big. So there were some insecurities I noticed in the chats about how people are going to react to it. Boy, we really struggled with this one. We didn't want it to be negative, but our Tech 2s, so they would be right below our foreman, we didn't really have anything for them. So they're just kind of out there hanging out, doing whatever, and our foreman would come back. A comment I had last year, they're like, well, I don't want Jimmy with me. He doesn't do anything. I'm like, well, gosh, this guy's been with us for an entire year. Like, why didn't anybody say something? Like I thought he was okay, And so we hold our foreman to such a high accountability. Like, we got to make sure we have people with them and they're performing so that, and there's some sort of deal there. The problem is, just like everybody, if there wasn't a formula to give them some constructive feedback, nobody's going to approach it. It's just, it's uncomfortable. So we started this. We actually ran this last month without an incentive tied to it. We've had nobody late, which is huge for us. Actually, I saw somebody the other day. It was like 7:29, and they were running across the parking lot to get there by 7:30. Not to say I want them running through the parking lot, but that made me feel good. Like, it all of a sudden changed. This is our first week, our first month now going live with this, but we've already noticed huge payback on this. Foremen are coming back. People are growing. There's some coaching that's going to kind of have to happen with this. Some of it, attitude. How do you judge attitude? So they have to give a specific example of what was going on with that attitude and why. But we've noticed everybody wants to circle the ends, the no's. Nobody wants to give a yes, which we understand. But just having this conversation with them weekly, we've noticed that it's been huge. We still, like we said, we still have some coaching to do, just even focusing on positive, like, hey, I was grading, I was grading, you had nothing to do. That was pretty awesome. You went back to the truck, started cleaning the truck and restocking it and get it loaded up so we could get out of there, at a decent time at the end of the day. Just positive feedback like that to give it to it. But we never really had any structure for a text. So we're pretty excited about this. Obviously, we're going to keep tweaking it, but at the moment, we've already seen some big payback.
Yeah, this is huge. Okay, let's move to some questions from the group. I'm gonna handpick. I think Mark's got to go at the top of the hour, so I'm gonna handpick a couple that I think are especially good for him while we have him, and then there's a bunch for us as a group that we can go a few minutes over. This is a question, Mark. This is totally up your alley from Rocco. What do you think about exposing project financial data to staff? Is it presented to all on your crew or only the management? What's your philosophy on that?
Yeah, really good question. I think the best way to handle that is to create crew budgets and then give every crew their results. So we want to let the crews know what their revenue target is for the year and how much we're going to spend on labor, material, equipment, and subs, and how much overhead they are responsible to contribute toward. And so then we want to give them a monthly actual, which tells them how much revenue they produced and how the expenses look. And then the only other thing we want to give them is job cost results as jobs are ongoing in the maintenance division or after they're completed on the install side. And other than that, they can just manage themselves day to day using estimated versus actual hours right from the app. So we want to keep the metrics pretty simple, give them their crew goals for the year, give them their actuals for the month, give them their actuals on the jobs they're working on, and then give them real-time feedback with estimated versus actual hours.
Phenomenal answer. I just got a text from your team, Mark, saying they've moved your town hall back 15 minutes and they want you to know. So you can go a little over, but we won't abuse it. Question from Chris. Good to see you, Chris. I recognize that name. How do you handle drive time for the crews? Does anyone have a good answer for this?
For our install, I guess we can jump in. We just have them clock into the job at the beginning of the day. So drive time is included in our estimated time. So it keeps it simpler. They just clock right into the job and it's covered in there.
Our maintenance,
you guys drive time right in to the estimate.
We do. So actually, when we're bidding the estimate, we actually have a drive time tab. So if it's longer than 10 minutes away, it's super easy to jump that out of the production sheet. And it's actually like, if we have 70 man hours on that job, it's going to take, you're going to have 7 people banging in a truck for a half an hour each day. That actually gets its own hours tied to it for that job. But then our maintenance, they're curb to curb. So drive time's a little bit different. But then it comes down to making sure that their day is routed efficiently to make sure that we're not losing drive time in between things.
Cool. Question from Michael Arding. Jen, Matt, and Mark. Does the balance of your time increase, decrease, or stay the same as your company grows from year to year? In other words, jumping from 2 million to 3 million, would you begin budgeting more of your time focusing on setting goals for your growing staff, or does it stay the same from year to year? Matt and Jen, you guys want to have a stab at that one?
I would say as we've grown, we've definitely had to put more time into working on the business, kind of the big picture things and setting goals and figuring out what these KPIs are that we need to track than we ever had previously. But I think the return has been so worth it as well.
Yeah.
You could speak to some of that too.
No, that's totally what drove us to BTA. We were working and just felt like we were never getting anywhere. And now kind of having some structure, start seeing it's really helped us align our values of what we're looking for. So it's a different type of work. It definitely, it's like I keep saying, it's like left brain. It's definitely harder for me to quantify that. I mean, I love being on the job site and doing it. Obviously, that's what got us into it. But it definitely, it definitely has changed. Yeah, for us.
Yeah, you kind of you work so hard to get yourself off the job site, and then you go, hold on, this is actually way harder. I kind of miss this being out there. But that's not the journey we're on. Mark, this is something that you talk about a lot, and I think you've got a lot of perspective and wisdom to share on this, both with the journey with TBG growing from, I remember hearing the stories like literally you and a truck and a wheelbarrow and some shovels all the way up to a $50 million project, a business doing massive projects. And then you sort of done the same thing with LMN, and that's a software business, but the fundamentals are always the same. Like, what can you say about how your time, your focus, your mindset, your attitudes, habits even need to shift at the various stages of business growth?
Yeah, I think where the leader spends their time is, I think, one of the major differentiators between each stage. Like earlier, I mentioned the ones and the threes. And so when you're $1 million company, you're spending your time in the field and you're really hands-on doing the work and managing people and ideally teaching people so that you can replace yourself. And I think, a good leader is always replacing themselves. And so to get past $1 million in sales, you need people who can effectively and efficiently do the work the way that you promise to your customer during the sales process. And so up to $1 million, you should be trying to replace yourself as a technician, because really you're an owner, operator, technician up to $1 million in sales. To go from 1 million to 3 million, well, now you have to do things a little bit differently. You have to be able to trust that they can do the work, but you also need to be able to find a way to measure it. And so I think you need to start to spend more time setting strategy and then creating goals that can be clearly cascaded throughout the company in a way where everybody knows when they're winning or losing. And so I think that is the transition from 1 million to 3 million. Now, once you get to 3 million, in order to really sort of step up to the $5, $6, $10 million business, you now need other leaders like you who can hold other people accountable. And so there's this new sort of role that enters in, which is other executives or other senior level managers. And what ends up happening is many times when you come from a technician to a business owner, and then you're evolving into a CEO, I think once you're approaching the $5 to $10 million range, your role as a CEO is very different than an operator. It always kind of bothers me when people call themselves a CEO when they've got a $500,000 business, because I don't think they're a CEO. I think they're an owner operator. And when you get to be a CEO, what that means is you set strategy and you tie that back to meaningful goals, and you're able to recruit an executive team or a management team who can deploy that strategy in your absence. So you're not at the front line anymore, making sure that the pavers are being laid well. You're way upstream, making sure that the strategy's there, that the financial management is in place, that the team is being held accountable using metrics, and that you've got a rational way of continuously improving the business. And that is the role of the CEO in any business, I think. And oftentimes people just assume that the business will scale and all of these things will keep running smoothly without evolving as a leader. And I think that's the difference between being a owner operator, a business owner, and a CEO. I think there's very different roles that sort of unfold as the business scales.
Jen and Matt, as married owners of your company, do you share the responsibility of reviewing goals with your staff, or does one of you take the lead on this within your role?
Matt does, well, I guess we are both present and come up with all of the deliverables and accountabilities for our employee agreements every year. That's both of our responsibilities in discussing with everyone. As far as the biweekly GSRs, Matt takes those for all of our department heads. I oversee the business office, so I have one direct report. So she's my responsibility in the GSR department. Matt does all of the production side, and our production manager then takes the foreman and the lower levels there. But did we say there's 5 that you handle on a biweekly basis?
So you guys split it up based on like the logical chain of command based on the parts of the business that you guys lead, and then the people therein. It's sort of like divisionally, in other words.
Correct. Yep.
Here's another really great question. I think this will be our last one. This is a question from Ryan. And I'm assuming based on how this question is worded that he is a super bought-in employee versus an owner. If you're still on, Ryan, correct me if I'm wrong, but what he asks is, how do we get the company owner on board with this? Our admin team is ready to go and set things up accurately. How do we get the owner of the company on board? So I think it's a question about leading up a little bit. Mark, any thoughts on that?
I get this question a lot on social media. To be honest, it's a hard one to answer without undermining anybody. But the truth is I think having candid conversations with the owner, if you're an employee and you are feeling frustrated by their lack of attention to different components of leadership, I think just pointing it out is the best thing to do. I have had this so many times throughout my career, I can't count, where my direct reports have come to me and said very politely or in a roundabout way, hey, I'm really being held back because we aren't doing this. And so I think that's a good way to say it. And if the owner can't understand that the we is them, then eventually, if they're not self-aware enough to listen, then, it may be time to find a new role, to be completely honest. But I think telling them, being honest, letting them know that you think things could be better if, as a group, you started to do a few key things that aren't happening. If they can't see that that's their job to make that happen, you know what to do.
Yeah. I would like to add something really quick to that. I want to sort of normalize this for owners and leaders. Like if you're having people come to you saying something like this, having candid conversations with you about what they want and need and what maybe they're missing, that's a really good thing. I literally had 2 of those this month with people on my team. Word for word, that exact same thing. Hey, like you're a little slow to make a decision on this, or your project management on this thing has gone sideways and I really want to get this done for my development. I'm like, oh my God, you're so right. It's a really, if you're a leader and you're getting that kind of feedback, I'd consider yourself lucky. Most people don't even get the chance to make the corrections. And I think it's a very, very healthy thing.
That's when you're winning. Honestly, that's when you're winning. If your team can tell you that you need to improve in a certain area, or that the company needs to evolve in a certain area, or both, I think that's when you know you're actually winning. Otherwise, you've got bad culture. If people can't tell you what needs to change, then you've got a culture problem.
I think that is as good a place as any to begin wrapping up. I have a few things I want to close with. For those of you, and there's still about 270 people on this web class, I'd love to hear from you. Like we've covered a whole bunch of stuff. We had some curriculum, we had some tools, we had some roundtable discussion, we had a Q&A. What was your biggest takeaway from the last hour and a half? Let us know in the chat box. Was it the GSR system? Was it one of Matt or Jen's stories or insights? Was it something from Mark? Let us know in the, just type out a sentence or two. Let us know. I'd love to hear what that was and what you're going to take action on. LMN Ingredients, 2 months free, promo code BTA 2024. You guys know that we are huge endorsers of LMN and everything they do. Incredibly powerful tool. They're always updating stuff too. I mean, I would love to just give you a shout out, Mark. I'm so impressed with how on it you guys are. I mean, there's a lot of software platforms that get built once and then they just, no updates, that's it. You just can pay us, and there's always innovative stuff going on, new features being added, improvements being made. And I think that they are truly the best in the industry at that. So you can press that big blue click here button to access that. You can also, on that same landing page, learn about Breakthrough Academy and the contractor growth method and how we systemize contracting businesses for growth. That is all on this page right here. I will find, where's my link? Like here. Once again, the landing page looks like this. You fill out the form. You say, send me the resources and book a call. You book a call with us. Please book a call only if you know you're going to make it. If you don't know you're going to make it, we'll call you and connect with you that way. Really easy way to get your resource bundle. What other things do I have here to mention? Podcast every Wednesday on every platform. It's called Contract Revolution. YouTube, Apple Podcasts, and Spotify. Check that out for some great free education wherever you are, whenever you want. And then I would like to close just by thanking Matt and Jen for their generous time by doing this. You know what it's like to be a busy landscaper at the start of May. So it's really, really kind and gracious of them to carve out their time to do this. And the same thing goes for Mark. So thank you guys for doing this with us. We really appreciate it. Based on the attendance, the retention, and the chat box, it sounds like everyone got a ton out of this. So thanks for being here, guys.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Great job moderating, and love the frameworks that you shared here today. So thanks for all that great sharing for the community for sure.
Okay, guys, we will talk to you all later. Keep your eyes on your inbox. We do these web classes all the time, so there will be another one coming up soon on some other great topic that we'll choose. Thank you for coming. We will see you at the next one. Have a great spring and summer. Take care.